Hola, buenos días. ¿Cómo están? Bienvenidos a esta sesión de Aspro México, donde hoy tendremos la participación de Jason McMahon. Él es speaker de Gamma International y hoy nos comparte un video muy interesante. Estoy viendo que ya se están empezando a conectar más personas. Bienvenidos. Buen día, Eric Rodríguez, desde Reynosa. Gracias por conectarse, Eric. Hola, Osbe, buenos días. Desde Bacalar, wow. Gabriel, buenos días. Muy buen día, Gabriel. Buenos días desde Campeche. ¿Qué tal, Campeche? ¿Cómo está, José? ¿Todo bien? Qué bueno que se conectan. ¿Qué tal les ha parecido esta nueva forma de trabajar virtual? Luis Castañeda, buenos días, Luis. Desde Veracruz, buenos días, Raúl. Stephanie, buenos días. De Mérida. Hola, Miguel, buenos días. Ah, claro que sí, os ve ya en más contacto, más fácil. Desde donde quiera que estés te puedes conectar. Paloma Fernández, Tijuana. Sí, claro, desde cualquier lado. Mario Lozano, Futurea, Monterrey. Sí, claro, no perdemos tiempo en el traslado, ya nos ahorramos ahí mucho tiempo. Saludos, Mario. Buenos días desde Monterrey, Leticia. Qué gusto poder tenerlos aquí con nosotros este día. Pues comentarles que la sesión de hoy es una sesión grabada. El chico que nos va a presentar el tema se presentó en LAN virtual de este año, de Estados Unidos. De igual forma, como verán en la presentación, tenemos un evento con Gamma International que se llama Viacon. A todos los socios vigentes les tuvo que haber llegado su ticket. Les llega un ticket donde viene su número, viene su nombre y viene su ID para poder ingresar. Si eres socio y no te llegó, avísanos para que te lo reenviemos y puedas entrar a estas sesiones. Saludos desde la Ciudad de México, Insignia. Hola, Isaac. Hola, Isaac Setune, ¿cómo estás? Dulce Arteaga, Guadalajara. Emanuel de Mérida, Grupo a seguir. Grupo a seguir, ok. Elías García Ruiz, buenos días, Elías, del Estado de México. A mí no me llegó. Ok, sí, a todos estos vamos a hacer una listita para que lo consultemos y puedan tener, y ya con esto pueden entrar a la plataforma. Les voy a mostrar un poco, okay. ¿Me ayudas, Honorio, para que pueda compartir mi pantalla, por favor? Alejandro, ¿cómo estás? De Seguros Atlas. Stephanie Vilchis desde Mérida, Guadalajara. Eduardo Medrano, buenos días. Okay. Les explico un poco lo de Bicom. Ustedes ingresan a la página de Gamma Web, y posteriormente le dan clic al evento. Una vez estando aquí, le dan acceso a la plataforma y es aquí donde van a ingresar su correo y sus credenciales para poder entrar. Como les comenté, les tendría que haber llegado un ticket que nos envió Gamma International. Entonces, si no lo tienen, avísenme. Yo aquí voy a tomar nota de las personas que me digan para que se los enviemos, le enviemos su ID y puedan entrar a esta sesión. Es del 22 al 30 de septiembre, del 22 de julio al 30 de septiembre. Alejandro, hola, muy buen día, un saludo desde Monterrey, buenos días. Ricardo Antonio, saludos. Hola, Ricardo. Enrique Alpizar, Oaxaca. Enrique Cepeda de Guadalajara. Eduardo de Tijuana, no me llegó. Ok, aquí los vamos a tener. Vamos a hacer la lista para que lo chequemos. Para que les mandemos el acceso. Hola, Soco, buenos días. ¿sale? Entonces, se los recomiendo mucho. Y si tienen alguna duda sobre este evento, les vamos a hacer llegar toda la información. Pero si no llegaron su ticket, se los enviamos. ¿Sale? Tengo otros chats. Muchos gracias. Grupo AB desde Mérida. Hola, Dano, buenos días. Alejandro Cardona, saludos, Alejandro. AXA, Ciudad de México. Manuel Escalera, no me llegó. Ok, aquí tomo dato de tu correo. Recuerden, solo a los socios vigentes. A los socios vigentes les va a llegar esta invitación. ¿Sale? Bueno, pues vamos a dar inicio a nuestra sesión. ¿Me ayudas, Honorio, por favor? Bueno, pues bienvenidos y pues lo dejamos con esta sesión. Espero que sea de su agrado. Y con gusto mándenme sus correos para que los chequemos y les enviemos la información. Gracias.
Say on there, I was coming to you from Toronto, Ontario, Canada. I'm actually coming from the capital of Canada, being Ottawa, where I really kind of wish I was in Florida in different circumstances right now, because I went out this morning and I thought maybe it'd be fun to do this presentation live in the woods behind my house, because it's snowing today, March 23rd, and it's snowing, so it's a little bit cold, but we are where we are. So I'm at the office, an empty office today, finding my social isolation and doing the best to make things work. So I know we are all pushing the new limits of using technology and continue moving our business and our lives forward. And I just commend everybody along the way that's taking this opportunity to grow and enrich themselves through a forum like Lamp Live. Thanks to Bonnie and the team. I know no matter the circumstances, I certainly have a debt of gratitude to the Gamma team led by Bonnie Godsman and Mark Caden from AALU as they unite the profession going forward. Bonnie, I hope Mike's having a good time in Pennsylvania finding all the beer. I'll find this up. I will move forward here. Talk about the three things that we're going to focus on. So I've evolved my presentation to walk you back through parts of the journey in recruitment to ensure you're engaging your new recruit right out of the gates from the start of the process into your weekly development meetings properly. And as I go, please ask some questions or do the raise your hand. I've got some spots inside this presentation to be able to ask questions, and I'll take some moments to stop and hear from you as we go. But some of the key pieces that I want you to take away from all of this is your ability as a leader to provide clarity around your expectations for those new advisors. One of the easiest and key pieces that I often come across is the lack of clarity in what your expectations are, and often that stems on how you communicate to these advisors. So we're going to talk about that as we go through, and I'll talk to you about how we can best collaborate with your advisors to ensure that the way you build your communication methods will be unwavering and adaptive to each of your advisors. While many of them have their differences, we'll walk through the methodology that we use to ensure that you're able to hold each one of them accountable to the same standards, but individualized, so that you can make people feel heard, feel unique, and feel important. So let's back up a little bit. I just want to talk to you about the company that I represent and some of my journey to get here. I represent Freedom 55 Financial, and we're a distribution channel for Canada Life, formerly Great West Life, London Life, and Canada Life. We've combined the three into one, and we're a long-time career agency, and we're one of the largest that's been a long time established in Canada from coast to coast. For me, I began my own journey after leaving General Motors. I was a manager at General Motors, where I just didn't feel like the future was bright enough for what I wanted to do in my life. And I was looking for something different to do. So in 2008, I made the leap into financial services world as a new advisor, and I spent much of my first year on an emotional roller coaster. On the good days, I was appreciative of this new world and my ability to kind of, make my own mark in this business. But on the tougher days, I kind of wondered why I ever left the safety of the success I've been having and that sure, steady income. But you know what, on the great days, I experienced more triumph and gratitude than I'd ever known in my working life to that point. Since then, I've moved into a manager role. I was recruiting and developing advisors in my initial office in Peterborough, Ontario. I did that for about 5 years, where I found some success and was fortunate enough to be moved to our home office in London, Ontario. And I led the recruitment and development strategies for our new advisors and our managers across Canada within our channel. So about 3 years ago, I was able to take over one of the largest regions in Canada. I now lead an agency that has 2 financial centers, over 150 advisors, and more than 10 managers on this team. I think it's just important for me to tell this story, as it's been a positive and kind of a real experience that's helped me be a great leader and really understand the world of the advisor and for management development. So just to give more context, our area hires 25 new recruits in a year on average. And we consider, when I'm speaking about this, a new advisor to be someone within their first 3 years, the first full 3 years in the business. So the region I took over, it's one of the best regions in Canada. It's been known for its success with established advisors, but it's went through considerable change over the last decade. I'm just going to focus on the last few years within that. So for us, we measure new advisor success based on information that LIMRA helps us put together. And we have first-year sales commission thresholds for each month that an advisor should be at during those first 3 years in the business. And we know that when those advisors hit those thresholds, that roughly 90% of the advisors make enough money to stay in this business for the long term and make a career out of this. So this has been our focus. And our region back in 2017 was at 43% at this mark. And, this has been a passion for me, bringing new people into the business and making them successful. So we put a lot of dedicated effort in how we go about recruiting and developing our new advisors. We've ramped up that success year over year. You can kind of see the stats on the screen here. We had a goal, we went into 2019, the goal of hitting 80%, and we ended up at 79.6%. So not believing in rounding up, we didn't quite achieve that, but I know we're well on our way to hit 80% achievement in 2020, and I'm so proud of my team for that. So this is, it's really important to me. As a relatively young leader in this role in our industry, to ensure that we have a thriving region for years to come, this is the biggest part for me, making sure new advisors are successful. So we also have a very dynamic and diverse management team we've put together that blends backgrounds, age, gender, and experience, and it makes just a great team. So just taking a look at my management team, and I just have to shout out to them. I don't have our Kingston Financial Center management team, who are fantastic as well up here, but a shout out to our Ottawa Financial Center team to make these great results happen. If you take a look at these people, each person on this management team has a different background, and they come to our business from a unique perspective. And what I've found is that the diversity of thought has changed the dynamic at our boardroom table. It hasn't been easy either. With such diversity, we have different ways that we look at things. But as a team, we collectively come together and we always do what's best for our advisors. And that's our guiding principle. What's best for the advisors, and specifically for this, our new advisors. And with this, we're starting to reach new heights of excellence as a team, and these positive results are starting to show from it. It's very rewarding. It would be so easy for us to put together kind of a vanilla flavored management team that, we all think alike, we gain agreement on things quickly. But what I've found is that our diversity of thought at the table, though sometimes it slows us down, it certainly helps us grow in a space where we can openly challenge each other's thinking, and helps us find great results. Yes, Misty, you are muted because I can't hear you. Bear with me. So, there's so much effort and work put into finding the right person for our business. And I want to ensure we talk about how important it is to get these new entrants into the business off to a great start. Getting your new advisors into the right mindset by experiencing early success it can't be understated. They need to feel successful, and they need to have some early wins to build on. We've lost some great people in the past when they feel like they start the game playing from behind. Here's for my fellow Canucks out here, here's a hockey analogy. You got to start the game with a lot of shots on net, and you're bound to get a few quick goals and feel great about things. It's the same with the new advisors. Take the low-hanging fruit, get some wins out of the way, get some commission in the books, get them off to feeling good. And it's so important for us to continue building our industry right now. If you take a look at the demographics in North America, finding the right people is no easy task. For each person out there that recruits people, you will always have my admiration, because it's a difficult task, even on the best of days, but so important. We know the need for new people is ever present. You take a look at this pandemic and the world happening right now, it's a good example of why great advisors are so needed. Just a shout out to my friend Manny Amezcua at Mass Mutual there. He says, it's time to be the hero for your clients. Sorry, Manny, I don't have a Batman mask too, but really appreciate some of the message that you're putting out there. That's true. It's time for our advisors to be great heroes to our clients. And for us as managers and developers, we need to make sure that our advisors are feeling supported and energized, and they can get past these things. So shifting back to this, ensuring that you know who you're looking for to fit the culture of your team or your office. Sometimes that's understated too. You may be able to find people who can be very successful, but you need to take a look at protecting your brand, what your brand and the team brand stands for. Sometimes it's easy to take on that person's got a great market, but they might not fit. We've done that before, and we've seen some culture erode there, and it's just something that we take a look at and make sure that everyone we onboard does fit that culture. I'd much rather find that raw talent who I know they'll allow me to lead them in the way that we do business, and not the other way around. They need to be good for your company, for your office culture, first and foremost. So the last point, creating a diverse team, it's also important. And we'll talk a little more about that later. But it's going to allow advisors on your teams to help each other and themselves speed up their own development. With that diversity of thought, bringing past experiences from their previous roles before they came in, it just helps everyone grow. So I was fortunate enough to get some help from our partners with LIMRA, and they gave me some good data to help support some of the material I've been putting together for this. And just a special thank you out there to Rick Funk and the team at LIMRA there. They always go out of their way to help support us, all of us in the industry, so thank you. A lot of the stats that I go through come from LIMRA, and most specifically in this one, it's from our Career Profile Plus. The Career Profile Plus for us, engaged through LIMRA, that's one of the screens that we use when we're interviewing our potential candidates. So what we learned from that is candidates today take a look at three major things that they're looking for in a new career. And one of them is continuous learning. So think about how this career supports the endeavor of learning more than so many other careers. When you're out talking to people, there's so much continuous learning that has to happen. It's just a part of who we are, and that really resonates with many new recruits. This could be an incredible talking point with your recruits to help understand some of their motivators, to which you can eventually use and build inside of your weekly development meeting agendas. Another one is community impact. This is a growing trend, especially among younger candidates who want to be part of something bigger. They want to ensure that their work has many impacts around the things that they do for their family, their friends, and in their community. So take a look at what your company and your office do already. Does this align with their values? And is it something that you want to talk about when you're onboarding them and setting them up to continue talking about inside your development meetings? It's important to them, so it should be important to you. And another one is job security. So while this is so important to so many people and can't be talked about enough today with the impact around the world here, but it's something that we don't always talk about in the onboarding process. So think about someone being self-employed. For many, this is kind of the ultimate job security. We believe that we are the best at bringing people into the business and making them successful. So make sure that they feel that and they understand that they're building a practice and creating something stable for themselves now and in the long term. So another piece to look at when you're working with your new advisors is the importance of their working environment. Our company has been in the middle of an office redesign, which allows for a new and modern working environment, which helps. But this is much bigger than the physical space that they work in. What LIMRA's data shows us is that what the new recruit finds important is being able to set their own work-based goals. We want to have them work together to ensure that these goals work for you as the leader, but it needs to feel like the goals of the individual are being heard and they're being put in place. It will always be more important for the advisor to hit the goals that they set, and that you are able to help coach them to be accountable to. Another piece that comes up is working with a mentor. It's very important to many. So depending on how hands-on you are with your new advisors, you may already be meeting this need, but it's absolutely worth looking at building an internal senior advisor as a mentor to them. You know, we're so lucky in this industry that our tenured advisors most often welcome the opportunity to help, support, and teach so many of our new people. So take advantage of this, but you have to set things up properly. It's not enough to set up a relationship between two advisors and not establish the framework of how they should work together. You know, too often I see these mentoring relationships go sour because the work at the front end wasn't done well. You need to take time to set up this by having a proper discovery meeting. You need to ensure that the vision and the values, they're in alignment for both parties. Everyone's intentions come from a good place here, but building out the actual plan and getting an accountability buy-in from both sides, they'll serve everyone so well in the long run. You'll also have to establish what your role as the leader is within this mentoring relationship. You can't just let it be. So the next piece that we learned is learning through observation is the next most important piece. We do a lot of joint field work with our advisors, especially early on in their careers. And there's so many different pieces of the sales process that need to be demonstrated in front of an actual client. I stress the importance of this. It's also important to set these meetings up with others, such as maybe a product specialist or another manager, or often more importantly, by observing a well-established, successful advisor conduct their own meetings. Allowing the new advisor this spectrum of observation and providing them the feedback from these different perspectives will help set them up for success very quickly, and it's going to serve them their entire career. Got the big water bottle today. So taking a look at alignment, I spoke about team culture and dynamic being so important for those of you who are building a team of advisors. Specifically, you should take the time to define who you are looking for. So for us, the things that we look at is typically their background, their age, demographics, their ethics, their values, their attitude, and what their natural market is. So you have to know who you as a manager best gel with, based on who you are as a leader, and help yourself by ensuring that these things are in alignment with the people that you're bringing in. It'll bring you so much energy at work and allow you to speed up trust with your people. Having poor alignment here can most often set you back and make things more difficult than they need to be. So look at the diversity of my management team here. Sometimes a great recruit needs to begin their career with the right manager. It's not always the person that brings them in. Aligning them properly and matching them up just goes so far. So let's take a look at some of the typical categories of hires that we have success with in my region. Keep in mind that some of these recruits, they're going to cross multiple categories here, myself included when I was a new recruit. We've had great success with the person who's already doing a great job where they work, but they may not be satisfied with their career. They may not feel like they're getting ahead. They're working really hard, but they just can't get ahead from a financial standpoint. Maybe they're not having good work-life balance. They feel like they're worth more than they're getting recognized for, which isn't always just about compensation. We still work towards bringing in great college and university recruits who are full of energy, enthusiasm, positivity. Onboarding them is certainly different than onboarding maybe the career changer. The career changer being a very common recruit for us. They're all quite different. They take a long time to kind of onboard and understand who they are so you can set up the weekly development meetings properly for them, but they most often have a good idea around how they work. And they know kind of who they are from a work perspective. So you need to uncover that and set them up properly. We have to work with them to understand their own whys, the whys of them, why they're coming into the business, and where they worked previously, to discover more about their motivators in their careers with us. And the next person we'll look at is the already successful mid-manager, who we often have much success with. Those people are great. They know themselves. They've got a good market. They're already well respected. This person often leaves their current role just because they're looking for more, and they can't find it in the future with their current organization. They don't see a bright future with where they are, as they're either maybe blocked or they can't move up in their current position, or they just don't see a great career path in the form of the right role, flexibility, or compensation. I'm sure this rings a bell for many of the people that you bring in. Not sure if you guys are eating lunch today, but I'm just drinking water for my lunch. I'm going to eat after. Take a look at this slide. Not all new advisors are equal. So often I see us as managers trying to onboard every new advisor basically the same way. Success here comes from being able to balance the company standards, the crucial, the non-negotiable habits, along with individual differences within each new advisor, because they have a lot of differences. So starting with really understanding someone's willingness to work, that's a tough one. So right now, with everything going on in the world, it really is a great test today. Maybe it's an unfair test, but it is what it is. And the test of a new advisor's measure, really understanding their drive, how they're going to make things work, how you can support them in spite of the difficulty being presented to them in the world right now. But really quickly understanding how much and how hard someone is willing to work is quite a task, and something you want to uncover quickly. Have that conversation with your new advisors and understand their dynamic. Do it before they come in. You're not here to judge that one, but you're here to coach them to their desired levels of success. At the same time, you're going to push them new limits, new heights of success they might not even know that they can reach yet. I've seen quite a transition in our world over the last decade in understanding how someone wants to work. It's becoming more and more important. Forcing someone to work on our schedule and in our office or work environment, it may work for many of your people, but it becomes stifling for some. They join this career with an entrepreneurial spirit, and we want to engage with that to ensure they feel some of these freedoms and work in their own ways. For the new advisors who like to work a little bit differently or like to work out in public spaces, you can take advantage of this for their own prospecting needs. Many like to work from coffee shops, and helping them see that this can be to their advantage. It's going to help inspire them. If they're working at the same shop at the same time, I always talk about being a creature of habit. It can help them naturally prospect. Perhaps that's somewhere where you're going to want to do a weekly development meeting in their environment. And one of the biggest things that can take time to truly understand is the new advisor's why. This can often take a lot of time, as I keep saying, to uncover, but do that at the front end so you can build your weekly development meetings. So let's take a look at some of the pre-work for setting up your weekly development meetings. Starting out by building a small business plan with your new recruit will help paint a picture of how you're going to coach them later on. Think about that new recruit out of college. She may have a big reach on social media. She can get a very large amount of appointments each week. And I'm pretty sure with most of the ones that we bring in, they're definitely going to need that heavy activity. But then taking a look at that more experienced person, more experienced advisor, they might be in the family market, or maybe they're in the business owner market. It may be tougher for them to get as many appointments, but a lot of those appointments are going to be a little more fruitful. So taking the time to understand their market before they start, you can build your weekly development meeting agenda, and you can tailor it for the right kind of activity that they will need to have to meet the income goals that they have in place. You know, on that same note, we have a similar onboarding training program for all of our advisors, but you're going to need to individualize different training sessions. You're going to need to meet with them and really understand what they need based on the income levels that they're trying to reach. You can set up the right kind of activity that's agreed upon between you and them in their network or networking activities, setting them up so that they're networking properly. It's pretty tough to put someone in a networking situation where it's not natural for them. They might go, they might not really feel like they're meeting the people that they want to meet. It's not their kind of crowd. and they never go do it again. So align that one properly. And it makes sense to individualize all the training needs for them outside of the regular training program. Take a look at what you can do to make sure they're spending the right time on the right material. It goes a long way. See someone signing in from the Bahamas. It's great. So I have planning here before coaching, before we get into the actual weekly development meeting agenda here. So let's stop for a moment. I'd like to hear from you, and if you can type in the questions, I'll read them out. I'd like to hear from you some of how you take a look at someone's market before they come in, how you prepare different advisors differently based on that market. Do you align how their activities should look to align for the kind of income that they're looking to have? And do you explore what they want in the future? Not every advisor wants to do it on their own. I see many more advisors coming into the business now wanting to be part of a team. And, I think that's great news. So let's pause for a minute and take some questions. And Grace or Megan, if there's a way that I can hear the voices, that'd be great too. But otherwise, I see people typing in.
Hey Jason, this is Megan Bronner here. If anybody would like to ask your question live with audio, just go ahead and raise your hand, and that way we'll try to connect your audio. It doesn't always work, but we'll give it a try. If you want to raise your hand, it's in the bar on the upper part of the screen. There's a little person raising their hand, so just click that.
Hold outside.
Do you want to try to ask your questions?
Who is that, Megan?
Oh, I see that Melissa had her hand up, and if she'd like to try, her audio has been enabled, at least from my end. Oh, and we have one from Maggie. What's the biggest obstacle in teaming from a home office system standpoint, and how do you work through that? Do you want to go on and tackle that one to see while anybody else raises their hand?
Sure. And other people can weigh in with their answers as well, because I certainly don't have all the answers, and it's really a changing scene for us as we go. I think the advisors who had pre-existing relationships within teams are finding this one a little bit easier. They're just following the same methodology that they had before, whereas they were meeting in person. I imagine some of them are still meeting in person, but as we go further down the line here with COVID-19, setting them up with their own phone calls, with their video chats. We use Microsoft Teams here, and we're setting up our advisors to kind of use that, but all of them have their own methods, and I'm seeing that their ability to team and meet with different clients is still happening. It's certainly slowed down. So I don't have a perfect answer on that one. It's certainly evolving, but love to hear what anyone else is doing there. William Stevens.
Jason.
Maybe you can read that out.
Yeah, so Jay, let's see here. From William Stevens, we have, how do you deal with the advisor that just doesn't have the drive, income, or activity levels needed to be successful long term?
Yeah, good question, and a pretty common one for all of our people. If you haven't went through this, you're gonna go through this at some point. I stress a lot on the front end of this, just having went through that with my own people when I was a newer manager, is you gotta do the work on the front end. You need to understand what their why, like I was talking about, what their drive is. Map the activity. Let them trust you to know that the activity that they need to have to meet their own expectations, you align and you agree upon that. So having kind of the agreement at the front end goes a long way. You're going to manage that and ensure that it still matches, their desires still match today as when they go in. But I know, like myself and many others in their first year, it is a bit of a roller coaster. So picking them up when they're down and bringing them down a little bit when they're really high, and trying to even out that curve and making it go that way, that seems to help us a fair bit.
Jason, if you're ready for another one, we have, how frequent do you do one-on-one meetings with your advisors? Should it be as frequent as doing weekly team meetings?
Yeah, so I'm not, the way I had typically done it, our management team do it, when someone's in their first year, you have a weekly meeting, and I'll go through that agenda and we'll show what 50 to 60 minutes of an agenda looks like. And you're probably going to have to add on some other meetings if you have specific case consultations or other needs that pop up. But to go through our agenda, for someone in their first year, it's weekly. Often when we get into year 2 and year 3, we do bi-weekly, but we have team meetings as well. And we might have some board call or check-ins each week. But for what I'm talking about today, inside of the weekly development meeting, first-year advisors every week.
There's one that I skipped over. There, somebody's talking from Florida. We have many different cultures in Florida: northeastern U.S., Midwest, Latin. Do you look at culture when hiring?
Yeah, I mean that's a tough one to answer specifically, but in Canada, it's much the same. We have so many different cultures, and it's probably more of a mosaic than a melting pot up here. So we do take a look at that, and we take a look at their markets, and that's part of me having a good, diverse management team as well. We come from a lot of different backgrounds, and we have different genders and ages and experiences. So I talk about matching people up the right way. It's nice to be able to do that. So we do take a look at that kind of fit. I wouldn't say that we recruit market specific, but sometimes that comes up, and we take a look at just making sure it's the right match, so that manager can best align with their market and be a good coach by understanding the cultural differences within. Great question. I just heard.
Jay, do you want to go on and take one more, and then we can move on?
Sure. Yeah, and I heard Megan. Maybe they can't hear you on here.
Well, I'm going to go on, and Colin Kirby says, with our recruiting mostly to a commission-based position, there are many great prospects that cannot get over the fear of the uncertainty of not having a guaranteed salary. Any advice on how to get them over?
Yeah. So, I mean, everyone goes through that one. We certainly go through that with almost every great recruit. For me, it's been great telling my own story, my own fears that I went through, and it took a long time for me to leave a salaried management position that I was doing well at, to take that leap to do it. But I implore you to, if you don't have the story yourself, there are so many great stories in your network, in your office, other advisors or managers that you can borrow. And there's often, you'll find a story that resonates best with that advisor as you get to know them. They should be concerned about that. It's a new world for them if they haven't experienced it. So taking the time to map down what a business plan looks like, going through a compensation presentation. And for us, we make sure that we meet with the spouse when that's a concern. We need to make sure that both parties, if there is a spouse, totally understand what that looks like. And having some money set aside at the front end helps. All the planning that we have, we do lots of things to help advisors get books of business or understand who they are, what they need to uncover that one. And that's something that'll probably always exist as they move through, but depending on their goals and they want to hit new financial heights, you can't do it in a salaried position. You can only do it in a commission-based position. We try and use that to our advantage. Great question. Let's move forward. I've got a couple more breaks within here to answer some questions, but I really enjoy that. So we talked about setting up clear expectations in your own communication. So we're going to explore more around the structure of that. So one of the pieces I want to keep in mind is ensuring that you are a predictable leader. Being very predictable when you're developing your people, it's not often talked about, but it's extremely important. So one of my goals in developing people is to lead them to a point where they need me less, and they become great at managing themselves. That is one of my internal goals, and try and set up for a management team. We want to set those advisors up when they hit day 365. They kind of have the habits in place. They know what they're doing, and if there was no manager in place, that they kind of have that instilled in them. So one of my goals is developing people to lead them to that point. This is important to make sure that for you, you want to be a great coach in the future. You don't want to be a good manager. So this sets you up to be a better coach than a manager. And ensuring you're never surprising advisors with your expectations. That's so key. It's not fair to them to deviate from what allows them to feel successful. You can't change it. It needs to be the same throughout that first year. So every new advisor, they want to be successful in your eyes, in their leader's eyes. So by ensuring they know what to do to be able to feel successful in your eyes, and the way that you measure things, something else that shouldn't be understated. So let's take a look now at the actual agenda that we walked through. So having a solid and consistent agenda is going to help you keep focused, be efficient, and be predictable. Let's take a look at reflecting on their market, their income goals, which we'll go into a little bit more detail further up. But you're going to take all of that time that you did in the front end to come up with some purposeful activity goals. To answer that question that we had earlier, make those goals and activity goals, build them together so you gain agreement at the start. You can plan the training appropriately, for us, the onboarding trainings the same, but planning the upcoming training and events that they need that might be specific to them, super important, and building them into the right networking events. A lot of them don't want to network or go to events, and sometimes that's okay, but finding the right networking event that's going to help them develop some of their own best centers of influence, that's going to help them generate a lot of referrals. And you need to take the time right at the front to build in and ask every week, how many referrals did you get? Make sure they ask themselves before coming in to see you, how many referrals did I get this week? They know you're going to ask, they're going to ask themselves. So setting all these pieces, as I'm going to go through each piece of the agenda, is very important. So for us, every weekly development meeting starts with an activity review. It's kind of a softer form of board call for those people who have been through board call or maybe still do board call. It's so important, and it helps you understand what last week looked like for them. It's going to help you be a better coach. But even more important is establishing the habit and the accountability piece to ensure the advisor knows that they need to report this. This is going to serve them their entire career. And there's a reason why so many top advisors in the industry still track their activity. And you can use those examples to reinforce why it's so important. You know, I'm not foolish enough to think that this is an easy one. The more you set it up in the front end and talk about it and ensure that they understand this, it's going to go a long way and help them. So make sure you've done that pre-work to ensure that they understand why that activity need is in there. So they're setting themselves up to hit their own goals. And you're just there really to be an accountability partner for them. I'll show you in a minute some of the things that we track, but you know, this is one that I think needs a few minutes to just talk about, because I know even sometimes for their own team, it's hard to always get the people to send those activity numbers in. So I'd love to hear more about some best practices or things that you guys do that we could share with each other on how you make sure people send in their activity for your weekly development meeting. I'll take a couple questions. I see a question.
Jason, we have our first about the COVID-19.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go on, Ella.
Huh. So a question from Moncole Lusamlet. God, I hope I got that right. It says, about COVID-19 problem, our advisor cannot meet the clients. Do you have the same problem? How do you solve? Yes, I think probably the whole world is having the same problem, and we're looking at our ability to meet people virtually, what it takes to be able to sign pieces virtually, and trying to open that gate up as much as possible. There's a fair bit of our meetings that you can do virtually. I know for myself last week, I had a couple client meetings myself, people that I was trying to meet for quite a while, and everyone's just busy. And let me assure you, people are far less busy right now in most regards. So reaching out to them and sending them a link is something that they can easily log into, even if they're not tech friendly. As long as they can get on the web and engage and at least see you. It's important that it's more than just a phone call sometimes, that they can see you. So you have a good video set up. We're finding that's starting to work for us. It's certainly not easy, but it's the way things are going. And take advantage of this opportunity. Everyone's in the same boat. And in a space like this, you're just going to have to do it. So things that probably would end up happening anyway are going to speed up. And this is a catalyst for that. I know we have some of our advisors today that are moving their practices to be completely virtual. And those people are ahead of the game. But take a look at those people. They don't mind sharing often on what's working for them. So I'm sure there's people in your company that are doing a great job of this. Reach out to them and have them share. thank you for that question. See, Robert Whitlock is saying he's using Microsoft Teams, Zoom, that they both have apps that can be set up on the PC and phones. We're finding a lot of advisors are doing that. For us, I know we're shying away from Zoom a little bit, trying to push towards MS Teams, just because of the servers. You know, DocuSign works for many that have that set up. I'll move forward. There's a couple more spots for questions along the way. Make sure that we answer them. So I want to give you an example of what we typically track. These 5 pieces on here, kind of the basic stuff that we track. It's not a perfect week, but it just gives you a good example of what we look for. And it's not to say this is the only way to track things, but it's fairly typical for us. We're in the middle of transitioning into using Salesforce as our CRM for this activity, but I'm far less focused on what is the best medium to use. I don't really care about that. It's getting in that habit. It's more important that we actually teach advisors to track, and then we're able to hold them accountable to it. You're going to find, if you haven't already, some of your advisors are very technical, they're detail-oriented, and they want to track all kinds of different things out there. You know, I encourage them to do it. Try it out, especially in their first year. Sometimes tracking more things and knowing what's really important or not really important, it's learning throughout that first year. So as long as they can continually adjust and you can coach and make sure they're hitting the numbers and goals that they're trying to hit here, it's very important, but it's non-negotiable. Advisors need to track their activity. So speaking of activity, we talked a fair bit about tracking activity there, but sometimes defining what activity actually is or what it means can be overlooked, but it's pretty important. So defining things, I'll take 2 examples here. Defining things like contacts and appointments. I find those are the 2 most important ones. So for us, a contact, it's reaching out to someone either by phone or it's digitally and receiving a response or an engagement from that person that you reached out to. What I'm sure you see, and I often see, is advisors, especially new ones, reporting back their contacts when it's just reach outs through Facebook or through email, or maybe it's LinkedIn messages. They send a whole bunch of messages out there, and then they report back that they had 40 contacts that week, but they only had maybe 3 people that responded back. To us, that's 3. So taking the time to define to them what a contact is at the start of it, ensuring that understanding is going to save you a lot of time and haggling what a contact is when you're in the actual meeting. And for us as well, an appointment. So getting together with someone, which obviously can be virtual, and moving someone through the sales process, that's an appointment. They need to fit somewhere within that funnel of the process, and the intent of the meeting needs to be moving them forward within that sales process. That is an appointment. And I sometimes see advisors, you know, they can be pretty creative when they're good at putting their activity in. They're creative in what they call an appointment. And maybe we should change the name appointment to a business meeting or some other intentional jargon. But the most important thing is that, you know, you've defined it, and the advisor and yourself have gained agreement at the start of it to ensure that they're defining the activity the same way that you would. So let me ask you out there, do you have any examples of this or any of the different messaging you use? Has this happened to you? Keep in mind these things you're defining, they're going to help the advisor to hold themselves accountable to this now and in the future when they're going to be less dependent on you. So we have a question from Fazad Bacchus. It says, hi Jason, I agree that advisors must track their activity. What do you say to the new advisor who has joined a brokerage environment and believes that he is independent and should be left alone? Well, I guess I go back to how we set them up when they came in and the agreement that we set up at the start of it to understand if you're their coach or their leader, or if someone inside the brokerage or the team is leading them to, you need to meet with all 3 parties at the start of this to kind of gain agreement and set yourselves up for success. If they don't want to report that number to you, I'm sure the leader at a brokerage sees the importance of this and knows that you see that as important. So if they can reinforce the message that you're trying to do in that first year, that'll help out a fair bit. Hope that answers your question. William Stevens says, those were 6 great activities to track. Tracking more than 5 or 6 gets onerous. Agreed. Having the ideal amount of each, comparing the actual number each week is critical for success. Yeah, absolutely. I talked about that a little bit last year. So we have on our agenda the actual amounts as kind of a minimum standard right on there. So they know when they're looking at that agenda week over week, and we send a copy of that agenda out to them after the meeting. They know kind of the standard there. For us, it's having 8 appointments, and it's different for every organization, I'm sure. But for us, if they're having 8 appointments or they're having 20 contacts or whatever the number is, it's nice to have it on the actual agenda so they kind of know as a framework this is what's acceptable, and it gets ingrained in them for their entire career. Great comment. Robert Whitlock says he used the MDRT 30-point day system with our new advisors. Great point. I don't have a ton of familiarity with that one. I have heard of that one, but appreciate you sharing. So on that same note, and I'll ask you a question here in a minute too, but it's a great time to share. But we're seeing through LIMRA's EY survey here that the current pandemic and social isolation has really expanded our need, and it's really speeding up our abilities to be that digital advisor. And I see even before this, more and more advisors starting to move their practices to a fully virtual environment, and I love seeing this. So are you out there growing this as well? So I had a few points on this, and I decided to take it down and just put it out to you guys in light of what's going on in the world today. I'd like to open up again. Are there any things that you can share that's working in your environment digitally with a lot of your advisors, especially new advisors who are in that first year in the business? I'll take a minute. I know you can't see it there right now, but it is really snowing here on March 23rd. Florida never looked so good. So Robert here again says, social media has doubled in the last 14 days. Social media is going to be critical moving forward. Absolutely. Maggie's getting snow in Illinois too. Great. That actually makes me feel better. You know, one of the biggest things I've seen from an advisor we've had showcased in the newspaper about how he's running his practice in the Globe and Mail out of Toronto, and he's just done a great job. He's been able to get multiple licenses now because he's been so great at being digital. So for us, it's different provinces. He's multi-province licensed, and he's able to meet with people across Canada, which is fantastic. And he's evolved his practice to go completely digital sometime last year, and he's encouraging people to fill out material like a fact find or a needs analysis, pieces like that prior to the meeting. So he's very efficient. So they're having good engagement via email and then over Skype or over MS Teams. And again, it's not the platform that matters that much. It's that he's able to take the time, send out an agenda in advance. People know exactly what you're going to talk about, and they're able to meet you in the comfort of their own home and you in your own office. And it's really sped up his ability to have a lot of appointments. He takes on a lot of different types of clients, but we're seeing he's way ahead of the game right now in how he does things. But I bet people are going to speed up on that one. Maggie says, we're putting out some new social media posts for our field leaders to use for recruiting and building out Skype resources for both advisors, for selling, and leadership for accounting. You know, I also see a lot of great leaders and advisors building their brand through LinkedIn and through online platforms. I see a lot more on Instagram, and it's just another great way to build your brand and create engagement and have people reach out to you. You kind of never know who's watching, so protecting your brand and putting it out there, you got to be careful, but it's just the way of the future. So people are doing a great job of that. There's many to see, so I take a look and emulate some of them. William says, digital will also allow you to develop a virtual team, leverage expertise that might not exist in your local office. You know, I just pay attention to this out in the marketplace today and the way the world's going, and I'm sure you're going to come up with lots of ideas. But if you have any more, I'd love to hear them or share them, or maybe there's a forum, Grace or Maggie, to sorry, Megan, that we can share later. For now, I'll move on. So back to the agenda. Big piece that we have on our agenda is a business plan review. So having metrics from the business plan and reviewing it on a regular basis helps to ensure that both parties stay aware and stay on track. And when I say both parties, I mean you as the coach, leader, and the advisor. So just seeing the numbers on paper and knowing the conversation, digital paper potentially, and knowing the conversation is going to put you on the right path to achieving the better intended results that you're going for. So advisors, they often don't understand how exactly they get paid, especially new advisors. And again, I can't stress how important it is to do a full review of their multiple pay statements. For us in the past, it was bi-weekly. Now we have some statements that are weekly, some are bi-weekly. But we have these pay statements, we have bonus statements, we have rolling targets, different levels. And I can assure you, many of your advisors will not truly understand this and will often portray that they do. Just asking the question, do you understand how you're paid? Do you have any questions on that? And they say, no, probably not good enough. Sometimes they're embarrassed to ask, and they may be asking another new advisor who's giving their interpretation of it. Take the time, at least every couple of weeks, to walk through their pay in that first year. It's going to take some onus off you in the future when they fully understand that. And as for the business plan, I'm also not saying that you're going to do a full business plan review in every meeting, especially weekly, but because it's on the agenda, and we're going to use it, it just makes sense to take a look at it. It helps hold advisors accountable. Often we see new advisors, they get overweight in one product line. And it's really telling when you see that on paper and you review it with them. You can coach to the opportunity to work with their clients on full planning and take a look at all the applicable product lines within their plan. It's going to create more appointments, a better look at things, and set them up properly to do full planning for their clients and not just be overweight in one product line. Then Megan says, yes, there's a discussion board attached to the presentation in the hub, and any takeaways that we can share in there. Yeah, I really encourage you in a live session like this that's over lunch and learning. The more that we can share with each other is going to help everybody in the industry. So very appreciative of that. Take a look at our agenda again. The next piece that we walk through is case consultations. And we set the expectation going forward that we have at least 3 cases open at all times. So setting the expectation at the front end, it's going to be key. It's going to allow you some time to review the case, but it also allows for you the coach, to see if some of these cases carry over week over week over week. And you will see some advisors talking about the same case for a month. You need to move on from that. But if you don't have that on there, it can just go by you. So make sure you take a look at those 3. And often in the WDM, the weekly development meeting, you might not have time to go into a deep case consultation, and that's okay. You can set up another meeting later or set up a product specialist or someone else to work on it, but making sure that they know they have to have at least that open. That number will grow, but they'll know in their heads going forward and throughout their career, I always have to have 3 good cases on the go. And for newer advisors, it's so important to know the amount of premium and the potential commission that's in their mill. Knowing that's going to help them better predict their future income levels. It's often going to push them to open up a lot more opportunities. Especially, there's 2 different ways you can look at that. If they're really low on the amount of premium in the mill, they should be working harder to build that up. But if they have a big mill out there, some of them will rest a little bit. And you as a good coach need to know that and make sure that they're not. Because it's that thing I was talking about earlier. When they're really high, you need to bring them down a little bit. When they're low, you need to bring them up. So making sure that they stay steady by understanding that and understanding how many cases in the mill, they're not just chasing that big case, is pretty important. So non-negotiable on our agenda is training. We talk about training every week. For us in our offices, we're pretty lucky. We have a plethora of training out there, and it's typically led by a training manager. We have a couple of great training managers in our area, and they set up and design and strategize on the training for the whole of the office. And the first thing that we usually talk about with new advisors is attendance. It's not always needed, but ensuring that their attendance level is high. And if they can't attend that they've told you in advance, but setting that clear expectation that new advisors attend all training is key in the early stages, and ensuring that you as the leader need to attend as much training as you can. Be there with them, be there beside them, reinforce the importance training is. It's easy for us to dismiss, we're busy, we've got other things to do, but if you show that it's important for you to go to training, they will also go to training. New advisors, they don't know what they don't know. They'll take a look and sometimes trick themselves into thinking that they can pick training like it's from a menu, choose what they feel like going to. We always talk to them, if you pull out 1 to 3 key ideas out of every training session, it's hard not to as a new person. It's going to build them up, give them more opportunity, and just reinforce that. Once you create that culture, I'm sure this question will come up. How do you make sure that they go to training? It's creating a culture. Make sure everyone knows they have to go to training. Make training exciting. For us right now, we're going to make training go virtually and do things like this, which will be new and exciting and a different way of people to engage. So whatever you can do to enhance your culture for training, it's going to help you when you get to this part of the agenda. You can take a look more specifically at different areas of need that they might have within their own network or who they're trying to see as clients. And often you can take a look at that and involve the trainer themselves or different experts or senior advisors to help build their training based on the needs that they have. Next on our agenda, skill building. One of my favorites, but probably the easiest one to neglect. I do 3, 6, 9, 12-month reviews with our new advisors to kind of check in as the leader of our office, and I have to admit sometimes when we're low on time, I'll skip past this one. Not often, but I might pick a shorter one. But this needs to be part of your agenda, and they need to know it's going to be part of your agenda as you walk through. Not many people in this world get really great at something without practicing a lot. Use that analogy. Tell the stories. Like athletes or great business people practice a lot. Set that right example with your new recruits by ensuring that you do the role play with them. But you need to be able to perform that role play and demonstrate each piece that you want them to do. That'll set up a lot of conviction of why it's important, and you being good at it just is great leadership. So, one of the things we talk about in all these different tools that we can use in skill building, that if they're not practicing on you or their coworkers at the office or maybe the virtual office, where do you think they're practicing? Where is that happening? Well, they're practicing on their prospects, their clients. They're doing their first run through, their first take on different things right in front of the client, and we don't want that. Take that time to take the 5-10 minutes sometimes is all it is to go through and pick one of the different things to kind of role play within that. So having an emphasis on, or we have a great emphasis on having joint field work. It's really key in the early stages of an advisor's career, and I know most of you out there are out there doing it with them. As much as you can practice and prepare, the advisor needs to know that you can be there and you can demonstrate as needed in the real setting. Most often that's going to be with clients. Something that often doesn't get talked about, though, is the debrief. So we're great at going and doing it. We go out and ensure that they can do each piece of the process. But the debrief is so important that you do it as soon as the appointment is after, if it's done, if you can. The emotions are high. You're either on a high or a low, or either way, you're just feeling full of energy after most appointments. And to review and go through the wins, the development pieces, the opportunities immediately after, again, it's so important to do it immediately after. The more that you forget or lose that feeling of the appointment as time goes on, it makes it tougher to give really good feedback. So in our organization, we ask advisors to be able to demonstrate each piece of the sales process in the real setting with clients, and the manager goes through and they'll sign off to say that they're accredited as an advisor to be able to go do appointments on their own. We're not perfect at it. It's our ambition. It's what we try and set up in place, but it certainly works. Just a quick story. I had an advisor with me when I was a newer manager named Ryan, and Ryan in the office, this is probably one of my best guys that came in and could really do his intro script with enthusiasm, integrity. It was really good in the office setting. but he was really struggling getting second meetings out there, and he never wanted to do a meeting in the office. He wanted to do it out at the coffee shop, the spot where he always went. We encouraged him to go, be that creature of habit. So I went out to the coffee shop and had him practice on me out there. This guy couldn't do it. Like, he was stuttering and stammering and looking around and thinking people are watching him and listening to him. And it was pretty poor. And if I hadn't taken the time to go into his setting and understand how he was doing it, I wouldn't have been able to see him fail and coach him otherwise and bring him to do it our way back in the office until he felt comfortable enough to do it his way. I encourage you to do the same. This is one of my favorite slides, and I talked about it a fair bit last year, but really, if there's one thing to take away in developing your people from today, it's the importance of teaching your advisors how to always be prospecting. You want to hear them always talk about their prospecting. You're going to bring it up every week. I've developed some rules that we follow in your meetings around prospecting. We always ask our advisors, I hate saying always and think that sometimes maybe you're not doing it 100%, but our intent is always to ensure that they have 100 names of people that they could call and hopefully set up an appointment with at all times. And we ask this at every meeting. For me, the alarm bell goes off when that list of names gets below 40, and I want them to know that and feel that. I truly believe the number one reason why advisors fail or quit and leave us is that they just run out of people to talk to, and it's a shame. Teach them out of the get-go that they need to have that list above 40, aiming for at least 100 on their list at all times. Sets them up for success. When the advisors their list dips below 40, I tell them you need to be spending at least 50% of your time prospecting and refilling that list. It is their lifeblood. But you need to be able to go and show them how to prospect and how to build that up. Once they kind of learn that art and know that it's important to do, it'll always be top of mind, and they're able to keep that list plenty and keep adding names onto it and ensure that they're asking for referrals and doing the things that make that difference. And if you show them that, this kind of rule early on in their career, it's going to last them their entire career. They'll never run out of people to talk to. Different avenues of buying books and teaming and things like that. But the bread and butter is always asking more people to join that, or putting more people on that list that you're able to call. Another piece that sometimes isn't get talked about, one of my favorites, because I have it, I'm sure many of you have it, certainly your advisors have it, is the chicken list. So what is the chicken list? Well, I just said that we all have it. And we all have that list of people that we want to call, but kind of talk ourselves out of it. We feel like we're just not ready there, especially the new advisors. They feel like they're not ready. Maybe they think they just need to know more before they contact these people, or they feel like I haven't been in the business long enough. But they really feel, in general, like they haven't earned the right to seek that business yet. You need to show them that's not true. So let me ask you, we'll take a break for a minute here and ask you, in today's environment, how are you coaching advisors to prospect differently to ensure that their lists aren't drying up? It's a different world out there all of a sudden. What are you doing, and what are some best practices to help advisors replenish those lists? Lots of people typing in here. Great. Robert, here again. Thanks for all the help here, Robert. Appreciate it. So as many social groups have moved to a digital format, it's a good point. He says, don't assume groups are not meeting. So groups that, if I understand you, Robert, that were meeting in person before, there's a good chance that some of them are still meeting. I keep saying people have good social interactions. Maybe they're having a wine night. We were just talking about in the office today where people are seeing each other on their screens and still enjoying each other's company without physically being there. At this point, I think, is that people are still doing that, so challenge that. Pauline says that they asked for referrals from previous presentations. It's a great point going back to who you've met for, or who you've met in the past, who's in the funnel of the sales process now, kind of revisiting that. It's a great time to do that. Claudia says they need to have a number, example, 100 new prospects. So if the list goes shorter, they need to work on that for sure. My good friend Joe Guido, he encourages them to join associations, committees, boards, and get on the board in the social media train that exists today. Pauline says they do a market survey. Joe says one of his successful hires hired a social media expert that has been paying dividends and gets minimum 2 leads every week. That's fantastic. Maggie says for field leaders, consider a fun contest for your advisors, keep motivation and activity going. You know, that's another great point. Try and keep this fun, keep people engaged and adding and sharing the wins as you do your own team meetings virtually or your own WDMs virtually. This is a great time to share all those wins and give new ideas. There's so many different advisors out there doing this. The advisors, I think, that were already great at getting leads through social media would be great contacts in your own organization because we all have them to kind of rely on and maybe have them come and speak if they don't mind speaking or sharing how they do it. Giving some tips. Again, our industry is great at sharing with each other. You know, I appreciate the questions in there. I'll come back to a couple more questions as we go through the presentation. Just want to reflect on everyone's time that we're okay. So transitioning out of the agenda, one thing that I know used to get the best of me was my own time management, especially as your teams grow and you're having success and people aren't failing out of the business. Your team gets bigger and bigger, and you know, I build my week to be so busy. I didn't have time sometimes to kind of step back, think strategically, and I see this with many new and successful managers, so it's worth exploring this a little bit further. So we often talk about making sure your meetings start on time, tried and true for sure, but the power of ending your meeting on time, and I talked about this last year a little bit too, but be predictable. No matter what time that advisor, if they show up late for their meeting with you, know that it's going to end on time no matter what. If they're 10 minutes late for the 50 minutes that you give them or the 60 minutes that you give them, you can't give them any more time because it's going to take away your time and it's going to create a bad habit. You're able to accept them being late. So, of course, this it starts with you being ready on time and ensuring that you reviewed the notes from your last meeting. You're up to speed with their world before they walk into your office to be efficient. And this can be difficult sometimes as you attend, as I did, building a day of these kind of meetings, and they're back to back to back. You know, that was a rookie move for me. And just because, like, we use Outlook, and just because Outlook likes to default to 60 minutes, you can't let Outlook rule you. A good tip that works is taking your meetings and dropping them from 60 minutes to 50 minutes, or, you know, if you had a 90-minute meeting, dropping it by 10 minutes to 80 minutes. You need to give yourself at least that 10 minutes to be able to just take a mental break, to be able to take notes, review for your next meeting, prepare for what's coming up in the rest of your day. And maybe it's just giving yourself time to use the restroom or check your email. But building it up with some time in between helps a lot. But make sure you end your meetings on time. Another piece that we put in place, and I'll ask you a question about this in a minute, but the admission ticket. So I use this analogy as someone, to gain entrance into my office or to get my time, or our manager's time, it means that they have to have it, for us, done at least one thing before entering. And for us, it's that they've sent in last week's activity in advance of the meeting. And advisors will try every which way to not do this, but you can't allow it. It is their admission ticket. It needs to be clear. They don't get your time until they've met what you've asked them to do. So, you know, the first tip here is you need to seek to understand first. Do they know how to send it? Often they do, but it's worth asking. So if they don't, walk them back to where they normally work in the office and re-show them how to do it. Hopefully you don't have to do that more than twice. And continue to do this each time until that expectation is clear. It's going to save a great deal of time for you in the future, and just creates that good habit. So there's all kinds of different ways to use the admission ticket, but is there anyone out there today that uses an admission ticket system for their development meetings? And what do you ask for in advance? And what do you do to establish this habit? I'll take a couple of points here to share. Greg Taylor in Vancouver says it's very tough initially, but they use the Granum system, and turning away people when they didn't have it worked well in his career. I know Greg's had a lot of success developing people, so that's a great share. And he says typically you only have to do that a few times. I know I've had the same experience. Walking people back and showing them how to do it, sometimes in front of their peers, only takes once or twice to ensure they know how to do it, and they continue to do it after that. Please write in some questions. I'm going to move forward as we go here. A few more points to walk through. And I just want to take a couple of minutes to talk about the importance of periodization within an advisor's first year. You know, we do a great job in that first 90 days of training, development, expectations, those things typically. And, you know, we own that first 90 days. We develop who they are, who they're going to be in that first 90 days. But you can't build, really, you can't build a full 12-month plan for a first-year advisor. The advisor that they are after 90 days is so different from the advisor they are after 6 months, 9 months, more so even more when they go into their second year of the business. So set up goals within those 90-day cycles. Starting fresh every 90 days, it's going to allow an advisor to refresh, refocus. You know, if they had a tough 90 days, they get to like stop and start again. It's a nice mental refresh. Or conversely, you know, if they had a really exceptional 90 days, they get to start again. So they don't get, you know, too confident out there. Knowing that a great 90 days is worth celebrating, but start again. It's a new season every 90 days. This really works well with our new advisors. Sets them up for success. And hopefully as they go into year 2 and year 3, they kind of have that ingrained in them that they're going to build out their own 90-day plans with your help. You can be a great coach to set them up properly in each 90-day stage. Sometimes for them, if they've started at the same time, sharing their own goals each 90 days and reflecting on those wins at the end of it and celebrating or regrouping as a team helps a fair bit as well. Here we go. So much development's needed, and there's no way you're going to be able to do all of that advisor's development. There's a lot of onus on them. So setting them up for success means giving them the ability to self-develop and develop with their peers. You know, 5 things that we focus on in self-development is role-playing, setting them up to role-play. We specifically do objection handling, and there's some different games, and I'm sure there's different games that you use to handle objection handling and make it kind of fun. Sometimes changing the name from role-playing to practice seems to help. We have a wonderful, as I'm sure many of you do, online learning portal where you can get all kinds of courses and things to do. A shout out to Joey and Maggie and Harry and the team at the Hoopus Performance Network. This has been so good for us. These 7-10-minute videos out there where you can assign it and talk about it later. You don't have to go through that one-on-one with the advisor. Let them do it themselves. Has helped so much, and giving them scripts. Giving them that, hold them accountable to script and performing it before they go and make their own scripts. So a great way for that role play, set them up in groups of 3. One person is the advisor, one person is the prospect or the client, and the other person is a coach or observer, and have them rotate through. You need to jump into those things and see how it's going and set up expectations within it, but allow them to use that time to self-develop themselves. So now, virtually, they'll be able to do that as well. Build the 3 of them, check in, see how that's going. As we're getting near the end, one of the last pieces that we end our meetings with typically is commitments. So we like to build commitment between yourself and the advisor, and assigning commitments between you as the leader and the new advisor. It's so key, and it really allows for trust to be built. So commitments, they go both ways. Sometimes it's the leader committing to action for the advisor, which is a great opportunity for you to build accountability. And it's a great way to establish and speed up trust between the two of you. You know, if you live up to your commitments, they're going to live up to their commitments. And the fact that you do that and you talk about that coming out of each meeting gives them a focused plan for development going forward, sets up a great trust between the leader and the advisor. And finally, you know, we got them to the day 365, as Bonnie said. It's a great time to take a look. Hopefully you're celebrating at the end of that year and regrouping for year 2. But it's also a great time to go back to that recruitment file. This one often gets overlooked. But if you take a look at what it said in that Career Profile Plus, if you use that system, there's so many telling things that you should go back and see. Did that make sense? Is that who that advisor was? There's lots of questions within that you can take a look at again. But going back at the end of that year to take a look at that, take a look at their market assessment, how they quantified it, how they qualified it, taking a look at their initial business plan. Did we hit those goals each 90 days and for the 12 months? And then the last one to take a good look at and reflect at the end of that 1-year review, which I really like asking our people, why did you come into the business? Revisit that why. And sometimes you have to do that before the end of that first year, but really take a look at the end of the first year. Did it make sense? Your why for coming into the business. Did we hit those marks? Do you still feel good about it? Were you able to accomplish the things, or are you on the way to accomplishing the things that you wanted to when you left what you were doing before to come join us? This should be a real feel-good exercise and push them to better heights in their second year going forward. Finally, just to recap, and I mentioned earlier in the presentation that being a predictable leader was such a good trait for your new advisors. You know, what did I mean by that? You know, you start and you end your meetings at the same time each time. You ask the same questions. You walk through the same agenda every week. There's no surprises. You develop people the same kind of way, but individualized. They feel like they're able to succeed and meet your expectations. It's so important. You make them report the results to you in advance before you ever start meetings. You make them need you less, because they'll mentally be walking through each piece of this agenda that you've been able to teach them each day. We all know there's another brand new recruit starting with us that you're going to be there to develop again. So building them up to need you less is so crucial. And I trust today that you picked up a few things around building a great development plan, a great development meeting, that you're able to get clear on your communication, your expectations with these people. And I know from experience that if you set these new advisors up for success in their first year, it'll serve them the rest of their career. And one day, you know, they'll look back at you, thank you for the success you set them up for. And let me tell you, when people do that, they reach out 10 years later and say, my life is so fantastic now. Maybe they had a tough first year, maybe they had a great first year, but they're looking back at what you did to accomplish that. You know, for everybody, keep changing people's lives. As Manny says, be the hero that people need. Stay safe, stay healthy. And if you ever want to reach out to me, please reach out to me either by email at jason.mcmahon@canadalife.com, or you can find me on LinkedIn under J. McMahon. Really appreciate your time. Happy to reach out anytime after. Thank you so much for having me, and have a great Motivation Monday. Thank you.
Hola, ojalá y les haya gustado esta presentación especial de Jason McMahon. Y por último, para cerrar, quisiera presentarles el correo que tienen que buscar en su mail, a ver si lo recibieron, conforme a la invitación a Become. Ok, este es el correo. En él vendrá junto este ticket, donde en automático viene su información para que puedan entrar. Su nombre y su acceso. Y con su número de ID. Si no lo tienen, por favor, pónganse en contacto con nosotros para que les podamos enviar la información que necesiten para conectarse. Les agradezco por su atención y estamos en contacto. Muchas gracias por conectarse el día de hoy. Nos vemos, cuídense. Bye.
Recuerda suscribirte a nuestro canal para que no te pierdas ninguno de nuestros videos. No olvides comentar, darle like, activar la campanita de notificaciones y compartir en todas tus redes sociales.